Well, one of the things that I liked about the Get Out is like because I know that you've described it as like a dark comedy disguised as an action thriller, and like most filmmakers, I feel like do the reverse. Like they use comedy to relieve tension. Like, was there ever a point where you worried audiences would be laughing at moments they should fear, and like how do you calibrate the line so that the laughter actually makes the danger sharper?
I think that tonally, it is a tricky thing to do this, for this particular tone. I think that the key I felt like was to make sure that everything that happened was emotionally accurate, grounded,
Hmm.
um, even when the situations become outrageous, I felt like just like so the comedy came from each character pursuing their own completely different agenda while occupying the same space. And each character, and I've said this before, so that each character sort of feels like they're the main character in this.
Hmm.
And, so the stakes were real and the characters were reacting in a way that, to these real stakes in a way that sometimes was comedic. So I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but I think look, I prefer to think of it as a dark comedy because I love the comedic parts of this, but I know that they're formed by the stakes and the grounded nature of everything else.
Yeah.
That makes, I know
Yeah.
that's.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, mentioning Unhinged, because I know that after that you knew Russell could be terrifying, and this film seems to be built around letting audiences also see how funny he can be. Like, was there a moment during filming where Russell did something as Manco that made you think, oh, that's the version of him I've been trying to get on screen all along?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, this started with the diner scene in Unhinged when he kills Jimmy Simpson in a pretty brutal fashion. I was standing around the corner with my monitor watching, and Russell would walk off as he leaves this scene of the crime. And the moment he knew he was off camera and he's right next to me, he was cracking jokes.
Hmm.
He was very, and he's a very funny guy. And I remember after we shot that scene saying, we got to find something funny together because, you know, someone else needs to see this but me, besides me, you know? And just in thinking about like the love that people have for the nice guys
Mm.
and how he really hasn't done anything like that since that film.
Mm.
I wanted to find something with him that, showcased that. And I think that, in this film, uh, there's so many moments that speak to that from, you know, uh, I love when he's talking about how the doctor's saying that he needs to de-stress his life, but then he starts screaming and honking the horn and yelling at the guy in front of him. And I just his timing is great, and yet it's all like I said, there's no jokes. It's just very grounded humor.
Yeah. My first thought was like when he's saying like when it's like taking the Viagra and he's just like, yeah, and like it's like such a non-issue for him. He's like, yeah, of course I'm
Oh
going
yeah,
to.
right. Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah.
And like a lot of, like modern neo-noir films are like they're like it's that got that like coolness about it. And what I find interesting here is that almost every character is like at a crossroads or on the verge of like a bad decision. Like, did you see this as a film about criminals or like a noir about people just running out of options?
Um, I love to explore that gray area
Mm.
where normal people or good or even good people do things that maybe don't qualify as that,
Mm.
and I think that, it makes me think about this character, the Bill Macy's character in Fargo,
Mm.
the situation he gets himself in and how he continues to make bad decisions, um, thinking that the next bad decision is going to just make everything back to normal again. And I think that in this film, it's similar in that you've got these characters that are, Jeff's not a bad guy. He just, made a kind of a minor bad decision that led to him, unfortunately, being forced to make a much worse bad decision, and it continues just to get worse. And all he's trying to do is just get back to level ground, back to where he started. And I think that I just that's what I like about this film is that it's the absurdity of desperate people making increasingly irrational decisions while keeping the consequences very real.
Hmm. I mean, as someone who's interviewed Nina Dobrev, I can be like, I feel like she could lead us into whatever she wanted to at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
And of like the sort of like Los Angeles from Australia, because I know that you and the Freddie sort of have talked about recreating Los Angeles like almost from like memory as much as geography. Like at what point, I guess, does authenticity stop being about like getting the street signs right and like start becoming about capturing a feeling? Like what makes a place feel like Los Angeles to you?
Um, yeah, good question. I think that, setting the club in Koreatown, a place that hasn't shown up in a bunch of films and is super recognizable,
Mm,
um, was the beginning. And I guess we were Southport, I guess is where we were. Gold Coast,
mm,
just looked like Koreatown. Overall, I mean, it was, it is, sort of their Koreatown, but it just
mm,
looked like Koreatown in LA. Um, I think it was about knowing we were going to have to spend a few days in LA shooting some pickup shots of
mm.
some more iconic driving. But, that part of Australia just looked like Koreatown for me. And it wasn't, I mean, thankfully, I've got multiple sets of eyes looking at it. Freddie's great at his job and making sure that I'm sure that if you really go frame by frame, you can probably find some things in there that might indicate otherwise, but for the most part, it just felt like LA already.
I always like watching a film that I know is made here just to sort of see what
Yeah.
it looks like. And I was like, it didn't, I was like, I couldn't, I mean, I knew it was the Gold Coast, but I couldn't like pick that it was the Gold Coast. So like it was a good job of making it look like it was LA. And I wanted to ask about Luke Evans because I know that when you were looking for that character, it was like the Gary Oldman role. It was like somebody who could walk into this movie and like completely disrupt the energy. Like what was it about Luke specifically that convinced you he would be the wild card?
Yeah, I mean, look, Joe Carver as a character is a wild card
Yeah.
already. I mean, the fact that he's um and spoiler alert, but he's an undercover, Fed trying to infiltrate the cartel by trying to buy Manco's club and get in with them that way, while also trying to date, the cartel boss's daughter and take his nieces out for karaoke is a wild card as it is. And I think that just in speaking with Luke, it's something we haven't seen from him before.
Mm.
And yet, such a smart actor, such a versatile actor, and it was just a feeling, I mean, if you think about even what he's gone on to do, since then with Rocky Horror and what, like the guy's got range. I mean, unbelievable range. So I think that he nails it with Joe Carver, and I think that I think it started with the character being a wild card, like you said, and I think that, or you said wild card about him, but yeah, I think that he's fantastic in the role.
And you mentioned before how yeah, like every character is like essentially like a protagonist in their own movie. I guess like
Yeah, yeah.
what was one of the challenges making sure every character could steal a scene without like stealing the film, so to speak?
I think that when you've got Russell as your, lead,
Mm,
you want to empower these other actors to like give it their best shot. And I think as a result, you've got these strong performances all the way around. Um, so no, I mean, I don't think we were challenged with the idea of sort of like holding people back because we didn't want them to overshadow
mm,
Russell in this character that no one's seen him in before, this kind of character that like I think, he's just so charismatic and funny and likable and also quite dangerous at the same time, Um, but I think that I wasn't worried that was going to happen. No, I just
mm,
wanted whatever scene was up, I wanted those characters to be their film. Each person, it's their
mm.
film.
Well, on that, we've got, Jeff and Carrie like essentially living out their Point Break fantasy while the film itself is like referencing like, like I feel like True Romance and other films like that. I guess were you interested in characters who have learned how to behave from movies and the trouble that causes when reality like refuses to cooperate?
I'm going to use that at some point, I think. That's good. No, yeah, I mean, look, I think that the idea of being, referential of a character referring to another movie as part of her who she is, it just seemed to make sense. It
Mm,
just seemed to. I don't know that it was one of those things where it was a philosophical discussion as much as it was like, what would make this person want to join a crime, be part of a crime spree with this guy that she meets.
mm,
Well, what if she's a bank teller and she's obsessed with the movie Point Break and she's been waiting for some sign to tell her that this is her chance to live out
mm,
her fantasy? And it just sort of blossomed from that.
yeah. And one of the things that I loved about this, and it was what I saw in Unhinged especially, is like it's like practical filmmaking. Because I feel like we're in this era where like almost anything can be fixed digitally, and like you seem like almost like stubbornly committed to practical filmmaking. Is that like a philosophy about realism, or is it about like forcing actors and audiences to feel genuine risk?
I think that it's a good question. I think that I try to shoot anything I can in camera practically. There are times where you know that you're not going to be able to accomplish that, but I
Mm,
think that anywhere that I can, I want to do that because that's part of the fun of filmmaking. I mean,
mm,
and look, not to take anything away from visual effects because obviously they can do amazing things, but
mm,
as a filmmaker, visual effects is them sending me something to approve or give notes on. It's not me actually getting to have my hands on it in a way.
mm,
In the same way, let's say that I do when we're trying to pull off something in camera where, the police car in Unhinged that the cement truck destroys that was a big moment in the trailer. Like that was, for the most part, that was practical. We
mm.
literally took apart this police car, took out all of the explosive, the gas tank and everything else, and put it back together loosely so that when the truck hits it, it goes in 1,000 pieces,
Yeah.
and that's all practical. The only thing that was a visual effect in that was the guy that was in the car. We just had to do a mask to put him in the car. Otherwise, we couldn't do that practically with a guy in the car. But I think inevitably a lot of things end up being a hybrid
Mm,
of the two. So anything I can shoot practically, I will. Sometimes knowing that I'm going to have to supplement, some part of the shot with something, digital, visual effect, whatever, to augment it.
mm. And one of the things I feel like circling the movie is obviously characters negotiating morality and legality. Like, it's like what fascinates you more as a storyteller? Is it people trying to become better than they are, or people finding increasingly clever ways to like justify staying exactly the same?
People always want to think that they're doing something to improve, whether it's their situation or themselves. But I think
Mm,
inevitably, a lot of times it ends up being, more, I don't know, more believable that they've got themselves in a situation and they're just trying to get out of that situation,
mm,
and therefore making, sometimes, irrational decisions. So, I mean, I think both of those things are fun to explore, though. I think
mm.
the one is a little more, I think maybe a little more interesting for, especially if you're trying to get some comedy out of it.
And I know that you've said that there are Easter eggs for people who love LA crime films. Like, was there a particular reference or an influence that made you think, like, nobody's going to notice this, but I need it in there because it makes me smile?
Um, I mean, it's definitely not, it's a little bit bigger than that, but I just love that, that we did a Kill Bill themed restaurant, which, as far as I know, doesn't exist. However, it should.
I'm good. That's like, so, like, what are we're 2026. So, about 5 years ago, very briefly, I operated a restaurant that was a Kill Bill themed bar in Brisbane. Unfortunately, didn't, you know, COVID and
Yeah, yeah.
horrible people that I worked with kind of put it up. But I was like, briefly existed for a moment. So I was like, it had, so at one point in the world it was there, but it never got to be the fruition that it deserved. So like
Wow.
by all means, it absolutely deserves to be a thing. But no,
So what
like
did you
you,
think
it's
of
like
the what did you think of the Kill Bill themed restaurant in the movie then?
yeah, no, like it was like looking at it, it was like, oh, as someone who, like, I had so many like great ideas that never got to be fulfilled. You just sort of look at it and just go, oh man, like if I lived in a movie, this would all work out.
Oh, cool, cool. Yeah, yeah. So I know that's not an Easter egg, but it's a little bit bigger, but that was that was definitely one of them.
And like reading about the film, like there's sort of like one idea, like, it's like almost everyone in the Get Out is like trying to escape something, like a job, a relationship, a past life, a fantasy they've built for themselves. I guess, do you think the film is ultimately about getting out, or is it about discovering that you can't outrun who you are?
Well, there's examples of both.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Manco does get out. I mean, spoiler alert, Manco gets out, but but he is still who he is, So maybe yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a combination of the two because I do think that much look, he was willing to leave without selling the club, without any money, without anything.
Mm.
So, maybe with it's like a bear in a bear trap, sometimes has to gnaw off his arm if he wants to escape and go on to live to fight another day, I guess. But
Mm.
so maybe it is possible, but you just may have to sacrifice a few things along the way.
No, well, I like as I said, like it was, I guess the energy that you sort of brought out in Russell in Unhinged, I felt has sort of he's very much like taken that persona on in a lot of other roles, and then you bringing him back to sort of comedy because he's an underrated comedic actor, and this is the kind of role that I think you sort of see and just go, wow, yeah, Russell Crowe is like he's still one of our greatest exports, and again, like the fact that this film was made in Australia just like keeps the industry going. So yeah, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time out, and then congratulations again on the film. And yeah, I'm looking forward to everybody getting behind it.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate it. I can't wait to hear the finished product.